Hare Krishna, Dandavat Pranam dear devotees. Today we are reading the book Coming Back Signs of Incarnation by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta SWAMI Srila Prabhupada. Today we will read chapter number 2, Changing Bodies. In 1974, at the ISKCON Center in the countryside near Frankfurt, West Germany, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada had the following dialogue with Professor Gottfried Graf von Duckheim. Professor Duckheim, a noted religious psychologist and author of Daily Life as Spiritual Exercise, holds a PhD in analytic psychology and is renowned for establishing a therapeutic school in Bavaria that incorporates both Western and Eastern approaches to the psychology of consciousness. In this conversation, Srila Prabhupada explains the first and most basic principle of reincarnation, that the spiritual living entity is different from the material body. After establishing that the conscious self and the body are separate entities, Srila Prabhupada describes how the consciousness, self or soul perpetually transmigrates to another body at the time of death. Professor Duckheim, in my work, I have found that the natural ego doesn't like to die. But if you go through a near-death experience, you seem to cross the threshold of death to quite a different reality. Srila Prabhupada, yes, it is different. The experience is that of a diseased person regaining his health. Professor Duckheim, so the person who is dead experiences a higher level of reality. Srila Prabhupada, it's not the person who has died, but the body. According to Vedic knowledge, the body is always dead. For example, a microphone is made of metal. When electric energy passes through the microphone, it responds by converting sound into electric impulses, which are amplified and broadcast over loudspeakers. But when there is no electricity in the system, nothing happens. Whether the microphone is working or not, it remains nothing more than an assembly of metal, plastic, etc. Similarly, the human body works because of the living force within. When this living force leaves the body, it is said that the body is dead. But actually it is always dead. The living force is the important element. Its presence alone makes the body appear to be alive. But alive or dead, the physical body is nothing more than a collection of dead matter. The first teaching of Bhagavad Gita reveals that the condition of the material body is ultimately not very important. Asuschaina ava anva asuschaitvam prajnavadamscha bhasase gatasun agat samsacha nanu suchanti padantita. The blessed Lord said, while speaking learned words, you are mourning for what is not worthy of grief. Those who are wise lament neither for the living nor the dead. The dead body is not a real subject for philosophical inquiry. Rather, we should concern ourselves with the active principle, that principle which makes the dead body move, the soul. Professor Duckheim, how do you teach your disciples to become aware of this force which is not matter, but which makes matter appear alive? I can intellectually appreciate that you are speaking a philosophy which contains the truth. I don't doubt it. But how do you make a person feel it? How to perceive the soul, Srila Prabhupada? It's a very simple matter. There is an active principle which makes the body move. When it is absent, the body no longer moves. So the real question is, what is that active principle? This inquiry lies at the heart of Vedanta philosophy. In fact, the Vedanta Sutra begins with the aphorisms Athato Brahma Jigyasa. What is the nature of the self within the body? Therefore, the student of Vedic philosophy is first taught to distinguish the difference between a living body and a dead one. If he is unable to grasp this principle, we then ask him to consider the problem from the standpoint of logic. Anyone can see that the body is changing and moving because of the presence of the active principle, the soul. In the absence of the active principle, the body neither changes nor moves. So there must be something within the body that makes it move. It is not a very difficult concept. The body is always dead. It is like a big machine. A tape recorder is made of dead matter. But as soon as you, the living person, push a button, it works. Similarly, the body is also dead matter. But within the body is the life force. So as long as this active principle remains within the body responds and appears alive. For instance, we all have the power to speak. If I ask one of my students to come here, he will come. But if the active principle leaves his body, I may call him for thousands of years, but he will not come. This is very simple to understand. But what exactly is that active principle? That is a separate subject matter, and the answer to that question is the real beginning of spiritual knowledge. Professor Dukahan, I can understand the point you made about the dead body, that there must be something within to make it alive. The only proper conclusion is that we are talking about two things, the body and the active principle. But my real question is, how do we become aware of the active principle within ourselves as a direct experience and not simply as an intellectual conclusion? On the inner path, isn't it important to actually experience this deeper reality? I am Brahman spirit, Srila Prabhupada. You yourself are dead active principle. The living body and the dead body are different. The only difference is the presence of the active principle. When it is not there, the body is called dead. So the real self is identical with the active principle. In the Vedas we find the maxim Soham, I am the active principle. It is also said, Aham Brahmasmi, I am not this material body, I am Brahman, spirit. That is self-realization. The self-realized person is described in Bhagavad Gita. Brahma Bhuta Prasannatma Na Sochati Na Kangshati. When one is self-realized, he neither hankers nor laments. Sama Sarveshu Bhuteshu. He is equal to everyone, men, animals, all living beings. Professor Dukahan, consider this. One of your students might say, I am spirit, but he might not be able to experience it. Srila Prabhupada, how can he not experience it? He knows that he is the active principle. Everyone ultimately knows that they are not the body. Even a child knows it. We can observe this by examining the way we speak. We say, "This is my finger." We never say, "I finger." So what is that I? This is self-realization. I am not this body. And this realization can be extended to other living beings. Why does man kill animals? Why give trouble to others? One who is self-realized can see, here is another self. He simply has a different body. But the same active principle that exists within my body is operating within his body. The self-realized person sees all living entities with equal vision, knowing that the active principles, the self, is present not only in human beings, but within the bodies of animals, birds, fish, insects, trees, and plants as well as. Reincarnation in this life. The active principle is the soul, and the soul transmigrates from one body to another at the time of death. The body may be different, but the self remains the same. We can observe this change of body even within our own lifetime. We have transmigrated from babyhood to childhood, from childhood to youth, and from youth to adulthood. Yet all the while, the consciousness self or soul has remained the same. The body is material and the actual self is spiritual. When one comes to this understanding, he is called self-realized. Professor Duckham, I think we are now arriving at a very decisive moment in the Western world, because for the first time in our history, people in Europe and America are starting to take seriously the inner experiences by which truth is revealed. Of course, in the East there have always been philosophers who have known the experiences by which death loses its terrifying character and becomes the threshold to a more complete life. People need this experience of overcoming their usual bodily habits, and if they can break through that bodily experience, they suddenly realize that quite a different principle is operating within themselves. They become aware of the inner life. Srila Prabhupada, a devotee of Lord Krishna automatically realizes that different principle, because he never thinks, I am this body. He thinks, Aham Brahmasmi. I am spirit soul. The first instruction given by Lord Krishna to Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita is this: My dear Arjuna, you are very seriously considering the condition of the body. But a learned man does not take this material body, either dead or alive, very seriously. This is the first realization on the path of spiritual progress. Everyone in this world is very much concerned with the body, and when it is alive, they take care of it in so many ways. When it is dead, they erect grand statues and monuments over it. This is body consciousness. But no one understands that active principle which gives the body beauty and life. And at the time of death, no one knows where the real self, the active principle, has gone. That is ignorance. Professor Duckham, during World War I, when I was a young man, I spent 4 years at the front. I was one of 2 officers in my regiments who was not wounded. On the battlefield, I saw death again and again. I saw people standing just next to me get hit, and suddenly their life force was gone. All that was left, as you say, was a body without a soul. But when death was near and I accepted that I also might die, I realized that within myself was something that has nothing whatsoever to do with death. Srila Prabhupada, yes, that is self-realization. Professor Dakaham, this experience of war marked me very deeply. It was the beginning of my inner path. Srila Prabhupada, in the Vedas it is said, Narayana paraha sarve, nakutaschana bibhyati. If one is a God-realized soul, he is not afraid of anything. Professor Dakaham, the process of self-realization is a sequence of inner experiences, isn't it? Here in Europe, the people have gone through such experiences. In fact, I believe this is the real treasure of Europe. That there are so many people who went through the battlefields, through the concentration camps, through the bombing raids, and within their hearts they retain the memories of those moments when death was near, when they were wounded and nearly torn in pieces, and they experience a glimpse of their eternal nature. But now it's necessary to show people that they don't need a battlefield, a concentration camp, or a bombing raid in order to take seriously those inner experiences when one is suddenly touched by a sense of divine reality and understands that this bodily existence is not the all and all. Hare Krishna, Dandavat Pranam, dear devotees. I served Srila Prabhupada today. Thank you.